And so what I see is that oftentimes people just expect that, hey, yeah, I'm just going to go about the process. Whatever the franchisor tells me to do, I'll just sit back and wait. No, you got to go in there and get your hands dirty. A lot of the people that wind up being top franchisees in their system, they often are the innovators in the system. Like, your ability to learn what works for you and your specific business is going to determine your success. What's really important is that you're always leveling up yourself to be able to be an even better entrepreneur. Make sure you pick the right franchise. There are over 4,000 franchise concepts. The right one is out there for you. I can assure you that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. I'm excited to dive into this episode. We really have an important conversation here to talk about. I feel like this is probably one of the most important podcast episodes I've ever done, including back on the Zero to Profitable Franchise podcast channel, because at the end of the day, business is hard and people fail in business. And there's a lot of statistics around the failure rate in franchising, or that franchising gives people more of an opportunity for success than starting a traditional business. And while I don't believe the data is very clear or accurate, I do 100% believe that that is in fact true. And it for obvious reasons, right? If you start on a road trip in a destination and you overall have no map, no GPS, no guidance system, no proven path that's been trailblazed, and you're just entering into the forest, right? What are your odds that you get to where you want to go? Are you even clear on where you want to go? Now with franchising, you get the blueprint. Generally speaking, right? If you're choosing a franchise that has a proven track record of success. So we're going to talk about 6 key reasons why people fail in franchising and how you can avoid it. So no matter what side of the aisle you're on, if you're a buyer, if you're a franchisee, if you're a franchisor, right? If you're just thinking about franchising, it's going to be highly relevant to you. So number 1, the first reason why people fail in franchising is because they buy the wrong franchise. Think about it. It's the easiest way to make sure that you fail in franchising. The difference between choosing a franchise that has a good system, that has good support, that has a track record of a majority of their franchisees having success in the system, versus a franchise that has lower average unit performance, right? Or has a track record of poor support. It's so obvious. It's so obvious that people still struggle with it. Why? Because here's one of the common things that happens with franchising is that you're just going about your day, your normal life. You see something that you like as a consumer, and you're like, ooh, I want to buy that franchise. How cool would it be to own X, Y, and Z, right? They go to a restaurant that they like, or a food place, or most of the time that's what winds up happening. And I go, ooh, that would be really cool. And so when people think of franchising, they often think of food franchises. When the reality is there's so many others out there. There's over 4,000 franchise systems, right? And so imagine that you want to make $200,000 a year in income from your franchise, right? And let's say you've got a net worth of $400,000 or $500,000. And you've got about $100,000 that you're willing to put into your business, either with your retirement plan, savings, and investment account, right? You're able to leverage that $100,000 to get a bigger loan, let's say through SBA. And so let's say you go the route of opening up a food franchise, right? A food franchise that's open many days of the week, that a food franchise that generally has lower profit margins, right? You have high rent, right? And higher, let's say, operational complexity in that business. And you're able to open one. right? Because let's say that business cost a good $400,000 or $500,000 to get open. You've got to put the 20% equity injection in. You put your 80, 100,000 in. You've opened up your one location. Maybe the average unit volume sales is, let's say that it's a little bit higher of a concept where the average unit sales are maybe 750,000, right? Well, the average profit margin overall in a food franchise concept is going to be around 10 or 15%. That's not including your debt service. So let's go on the higher side, and let's just say it's 20%. All right, let's just say, okay, you're able to run it really well. You're running labor tight. You got a good lease, and let's call it 750. So it's 150,000 in profits, right? But what will happen is that probably about 50,000 of those profits go toward your debt service, meaning your loan, right? Your SBA loan. Let's say the SBA loan's $4,000 a month, 48 grand a year. Let's round up to 50. So you're left with $100,000 a year potentially in profits, and you were needing or wanting to make 200, but now you blew your load. You shot your shot, right? You had a certain amount of capital to deploy, and that's it. You don't have the money to, at this point, invest in opening another location, which is what gets you to your goal. As opposed to, let's say there was a different franchise in a different industry, right? Let's say home service as an example, where it only overall you can get up and running for $250,000 in, let's say, one territory. And let's say maybe you were able to buy 2 or 3 territories, and that increases your overall investment by another 100,000. So maybe you're at 3 territories for the same price, if not less, of what you're able to get a food franchise for. And let's say theoretically that home service franchise has average franchisees who are producing, let's say, 30% profit margin, right? Or 25% profit margin. Now, of course, you need to validate this in franchisee validation, but think about how different the paths would be for that person in just choosing the right franchise. And so what I see from our perspective, having so many people reach out to us, either already looking at franchises or having looked at franchises before and wanting to pull the trigger, because we help a lot of people on the buy side, either in a coaching capacity or in a brokerage capacity, and they get so excited about one option, or they're looking at an emerging franchisor that has 1 or 2 locations in a space that's not new. As an example, if there is, unless an emerging franchisor is doing something so completely different and completely innovating on a different model, why would you go with a franchise that has 1, 2, or 3 locations when there are literally 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 or 15 franchises that have been established for 5, 10, 15, 20 years that may have 40, 50, 100, 200 different franchisees? We had this happen recently with a gentleman that was in our program. He fell in love, for whatever reason, with this plumbing franchise. He liked the name, the branding. Now, they were a part of a little bit of a bigger conglomerate, but they didn't have any franchisees yet in the plumbing franchise. And we had a conversation when we do our weekly group calls, and I was like, hold on, why would you? There's so many great plumbing franchises that have such a track record of being around a long time, having franchisees that are happy and profitable. Why in the world would you pick a franchise that has no franchisees? And he was that close to pulling the trigger on the franchise. So that's point number 1, right? Is make sure you pick the right franchise. There are over 4,000 franchise concepts. The right one is out there for you. I can assure you that, right? So I get multiple emails a week from companies asking to run ads on the podcast. I could have ads if I wanted to, but I don't.
So there are two ways that you can help to support me and the podcast to keep it ad-free. First is to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment, even a smiley face if you have nothing to say. The YouTube algorithm only shows the video to more people based on the likes and comments on the video. So your comment could help someone get exposed to this, and not to sound too cheesy, but it could legitimately change their life. Lastly, go ahead and share this with someone that you think will enjoy this episode. Maybe someone who you know loves business and entrepreneurial stuff, or maybe it's someone who's been saying that they want to own their own business for forever. You can message it to them directly or share it on your social media. It would mean the world to me. You guys rock. Enjoy.
The second one is a lack of due diligence, right? Lack of due diligence on the front end. And so here's what I see what happens is that a lot of the reasons why people fail is that they're not doing the right due diligence as they're going to buy a franchise. So what does that look like in terms of due diligence in its simplest form, right? Is number one of the most important things is validation, franchisee validation, is talking to other franchisees in the system and confirming two things. Number one, are they happy? Are they happy with the franchisor? Are they happy with the support? Are they happy with the training? Like, are they happy? Are they satisfied as a franchisee of that system? Would they do it again? Number two, are they profitable? And at the end of the day, it's hard to be happy if you're not profitable, unless you're at the beginning, you're still ramping up, and you're hitting your growth trajectory towards profitability, right? But that's essentially all you're looking to confirm in franchisee validation. Are there happy and profitable franchisees? And a mistake that people make is just relying on talking to the franchisees that the franchisor recommends. Look, at the end of the day, this isn't some malicious thing by franchisors, right? If you were a franchisor, would you recommend that people talk to your higher performing franchisees or the ones that are not doing good? You would recommend that they talk to the ones that are doing good, right? Because at the end of the day, imagine this, if assuming the system works because there are franchisees that are successful, what is the intangible? What's the variable between people who are performing well and not performing well? A lot of the times, it is the individual, it's the operator, it's the person. But the person will often blame it on the system, or they're not present or aware enough to realize, like, oh, hey, I'm a little bit lazy, I don't follow through on my commitments, I'm not disciplined, right? Or I haven't increased my ability to become an entrepreneur as much as the individual who's performing well. So if you know that someone has a track record of not making good decisions, and that's why their location is underperforming, well, you're going to connect them with someone who has a franchisee who has a track record of making good decisions, right? But at the end of the day, you still want to have that comparison point of talking to other franchisees in the system outside of the ones that the franchisor tells you to or that introduces you to, right? Or a lot of franchisors these days do group validation, where it's just a group call where they handpick franchisees and you never actually do individual validation. So I think that's a huge mistake, right? So if you're buying a franchise, in the FDD, in item 20, it's going to have the franchisee's information. It's usually in an exhibit later on in the FDD. So you're going to have the information for the franchisees. Figure out a way to get in contact with them and have a communication with them. Ask them the same questions, right? To be able to do the due diligence. And then the other part of it is to understand the numbers when you're doing the due diligence. Put together some financial projections. See if you can fill in the gaps on those validation calls, right? Do a pro forma. Ask for a pro forma. So you like the due diligence is the key. So that's on the buy side, right? So let's start to transition. Like, okay, once you bought a franchise, why do people then fail? right? Assuming that you bought a franchise that gives you a good opportunity at success, right? Meaning that you validated there are other people in the system that are doing well. And even in some case, you might buy an emerging franchisor where there is no track record, but you still have the ability to succeed. And so the next one, number 3, is that expecting the franchisor to have all of the answers. What do I mean by this? You're like, hold on, Tariq, but we bought a franchise. Shouldn't the franchisor have all of the answers for me? Like, shouldn't they be telling me what to do every single step of the way? No. That's not how it works in franchising. And it's a really, really big reason why people do fail. So the franchisor overall is going to give you the system. It's like a business in a box, right? They're going to give you the box with all of the pieces. Again, the analogy I always use is like buying a piece of furniture from IKEA or whatever your favorite place is. You're going to buy the box, right? Like, you bought the piece of furniture. The pieces are in there. But like, maybe only some of the tools are in there. Like, let's stick with this analogy for a second. Let's say you buy the box, right? You buy that piece of furniture. You buy the franchise system. Now you have to get it home. You have to get it delivered. So maybe it's a franchise that maybe they offer delivery, right? Maybe they don't. And I'm speaking metaphorically here. Hopefully you're catching, what I'm putting down. But like some furniture providers, maybe they offer delivery. Maybe they offer free delivery. If you spend a certain amount, maybe they charge for it. Maybe you have to pick it up on your own. You opt to pick it up on your own to save the money for the convenience. And then maybe when you're picking it up, you're loading it in your truck, maybe it gets damaged. Whose responsibility is that? You have the option to pay to have it delivered, but you chose to save $100 on the delivery and do it yourself. That's more labor and more effort. So think about that analogy in your franchise business. There are opportunities where you can pay vendors, service providers, additional labor to do things where it may cost you a little bit more upfront, but you'll know that it gets done. Some people opt to not do that, save the money, and do it themselves. Maybe it doesn't get done quite as well. But overall, you still have to do the work in a franchise system. So when we signed our franchise agreement, like there were a level of I was proactive. I was super proactive. I wasn't just going to wait on the franchisor. I had the system. I understand what it was, but I was constantly reaching out to them. Hey, what's the next step? Like, after we had signed our lease and we were waiting for the shopping center to be built out, hey, what can I be doing? And I was just always thinking, like, how can I take initiative and put myself in the best position to succeed? Because I was terrified. I twisted my wife's arm to take out a $300,000 home equity line of credit to do this franchise, and I looked her in the eye and promised her that we would not fail. So how was I going to live up to that promise? I was going to be super proactive. And so what I see is that oftentimes people just expect that, hey, yeah, I'm just going to go about the process. Whatever the franchisor tells me to do, I'll just sit back and wait. No, you got to go in there and get your hands dirty. So one of the things that I did was I started finding local Facebook groups posting that we're going to be opening the store, creating all this buzz. At the time, it was 2016, 2017, like Instagram ads and that sort of stuff. It wasn't a huge thing yet in the franchising space. So I took it upon myself to learn how to do those ads and was running. I was just spending $10 a day targeting a local 5-mile radius around my store, targeting people that were into like health, wellness, etc. So it's like being proactive. So for you, be proactive in your business. Show up, right? What happens is a lot of the people that wind up being top franchisees in their system, they often are the innovators in the system. So yes, they are following the system, which we'll talk about in a second, but they're thinking of how can we enhance the system? And so they're trying new things and being proactive. And then they're going back to the franchisor like, hey, this is what we're doing. in order to get the results that we're getting. So they're using the system, but they're going a step above and beyond. All right.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast episode so far. One of the most consistent things that we hear from people that reach out to us is that buying a franchise feels really confusing. There's so many options out there. It's a scary decision. They don't know how to vet or do the due diligence or really narrow down on the right franchise for them. And then they really feel alone in the process. You might be the only one in your family who's ever pursued buying a franchise or being an entrepreneur. Or maybe you've tried to start a side hustle before, or other businesses like me. Like before franchising, I was not able to crack the code on entrepreneurship. I'd like to invite you to reach out and work with us. We've helped many clients buy franchises, get them profitable, or buy resale businesses that are thriving. Talking about highly profitable resales, great value. We've allowed many of our clients to actually quit their job right away and replace their income immediately. So if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise, doing due diligence, vetting it, or resale, then go ahead and go to tariqjohnson.com/consulting, and we're happy to see if we can help. All right, enjoy the rest of the episode.
Number 4 is not trusting the system. And so here's what happens is you buy a franchise and you're like, oh, yeah, I don't like the way they're doing it. I have another way that we can do it, right? I have another way. Let's do it this way. And so you start doing it that way, your way, and not seeing the results that you want. And then what can happen is you get frustrated and blame the franchisor in 2 different manners, right? Hey, like we're not doing well because you're giving us the wrong strategy. I don't like the way that you're telling us to run ads or to get business or X, Y, and Z, and I want to do it this way instead. And so now you're upset that they didn't have the solution that you wanted, and then now you're upset again because they are not supporting you in the way you want with the way that you want to do it. And so it's important first to execute on the system, because I do believe that in different areas, geographies, depending upon the territory, there are different strategies that work in different places. We had to do things at the Florida store very differently than we had to at the California store. I didn't go to any events at the California store. At the Florida store, I was going to all these health and wellness, local events, handing out samples. We had to do that in order to be successful in that market. We just really had to do that. It wasn't something that we had to do at the California store in order to be successful. Now, okay, if we would have done it, would we have been even more successful? Probably, yes. But in order to have the same level of success in terms of sales, top line sales, we didn't need to do those things at the California store. So my recommendation is to follow the blueprint and the plan. First, follow the system, and then figure out what's working and what's not working. Give it enough time to ensure that it actually isn't working, and then you can try something else. But my recommendation would be don't wing it when you try something else. Don't just come up with something out of the blue. Talk to the other top performing franchisees. I'm honestly shocked by how many, I'm actually not shocked, because when I think about it myself, I didn't really talk to a lot of the top performing franchisees in our system. It's a huge, man, that should be a whole nother point of why people fail in franchising, is not spending time with other top performers and learning what they're doing. Think about it. You're in a business, in a system where there's 50, 100, 200, 300, maybe 400 other people that own the exact same business that you own, right? And if you're not one of the top 10%, why in the world would you not be trying to spend as much time, get as much insight, learn as much as you can from the people who are doing well and crushing it? It's a huge gap of where franchisees are missing the boat to really crushing their business, myself included, right? And then you hear Like, I remember when I was a franchisee, I'd hear one of the things that one of the other franchisees were doing, and I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, one of the things was collecting a bunch of business cards for like free smoothie parties and like calling all the people and this whole kind of game plan around it. And I half-assed it, right? I started to like sort of execute on it, but like didn't really fully execute. And then what happens when we do that? When we kind of try something, then we're like, oh, that doesn't work. It's not effective. But it's not that it doesn't work. We didn't work it. You didn't work it. It's fascinating if you think about this, because typically in each franchise system, let's talk about marketing and sales, right? Because marketing and sales is going to drive your success in the business. If you're getting customers, you can figure out the operational side of things. So from a marketing and sales perspective, you might have 5 or 6 different strategies that the franchisor recommends, right? You could have mailers, you could have pay-per-click ads, you could have social media ads, you could have networking, right? There's a bunch of different things that activities that you can do that generate business. And what you'll find is that some franchisees may use 1 or 2 as their main way to generate their business. And so like your ability to learn what works for you and your specific business is going to determine your success. And your ability to diversify and to get great at executing a variety of them is going to help to ensure your success even more, because at some point, one of the strategies that you're using may not work. It may not be as effective and you have to do something else, right? So overall, trust and follow the system. Talk to the other franchisees in the system. Number 5 is really important. This is one that I feel really fired up about, which is not understanding that the most important success mechanism in your business, and literally the most important success mechanism in your business, is what? It's you. It's not the franchise system, right? It's not the training from the franchisor. It's you. You are the constant in all of it. Stick with me here, because imagine that you have in any franchise system, there's the top performing locations, let's say top 20%, there's the bottom 20% performing locations, and then you have the middle of the pack, that's at 60%, right? And so what is the difference? What's the difference between those average performing locations or units versus the ones that are maybe failing or closing versus the ones that are the top, that are experiencing great success in the franchise system? What's the difference? Is it location? Is it their territory? Like what is it? And so I would say that it is the individual. Because think about it. If the territory or location is not as good as it could be, let's say you do a franchise that has a physical retail location, right? And you wind up choosing a location and signing a lease that you're overpaying on rent because you really wanted to be at this location. And so now that you're overpaying in rent, that forces you to have a higher level of sales in order to have the profitability that you want. And so it becomes more stressful. You got to run tighter on labor, which puts pressure on the entire business. And it has this impact that impacts the entirety of the business, right? It becomes this vicious cycle. Well, let me ask you this. Who decided on the location for the business? You did. You went through a process, you looked at multiple locations, and ultimately, with your current skill set and level of thinking and strategy, you made a decision to choose that location. And so at the end of the day, your success is dependent on your ability to make better decisions. And so you could have someone that's not even as smart as you, but they were just able to make a better decision in their business that helps to create the success, right? And so what's really important is that you're always leveling up yourself to be able to be an even better entrepreneur. Because the reality is, you can have an entrepreneur of two different skill sets. Let's grade them. As an example, you have an entrepreneur that's at a level A entrepreneur based on their experience, their tangible skill sets, the way that they think and operate mentally, right? The way they react to challenges, their resiliency, their persistence. And then let's say you have a C graded entrepreneur. Maybe they haven't invested as much in their actual skill sets, right? Maybe like when adversity or challenge hits, they kind of give up, they get really down on themselves, and then that causes them to make even more poor decisions or not follow through because they're not feeling confident, right? And so you take both of those individuals, and if you put them in the exact same territory, do you think that they are going to perform the same? Rhetorical question. And so many people get so focused, especially during the buying process, of is it the right franchise, and validating and wanting that certainty of like, will this work for me? And the reason why people don't pull the trigger or still feel scared is because of not trusting yourself. You're not trusting your ability because you know how you show up. You know what your track record is. So the number one thing that you can do to avoid failure and to make sure that you succeed as an entrepreneur in franchising is to increase your ability to be an entrepreneur. And so what does that mean and what does that look like? So for the last 15 years, I've invested about $100,000 in business coaching programs, going to programs, seminars, buying books, buying online programs. I don't really watch TV. We don't even have cable. Like at night, I watch YouTube videos on business. I listen to books on Audible about entrepreneurship. Like I spend thousands of dollars on coaches. I mean, at one point I was spending $4,000 a month on a business consultant to up level my skill set. I currently have an accountability coach for my business that I talk to once a week. And we go through what I need to be doing, and he holds me accountable. So I'm constantly learning. What's a new skill set? What's a new strategy? How do I have to think, right? And I do fitness trainings. I do Spartan races so that I can train my mind and body and spirit to be able to perform and to perform at a high level. So when I'm running in a Spartan race and I feel tired and exhausted and beat up, and that voice starts to come up into my head that I can't do this, you're tired, it's hard, why are you doing this? Those are the same voices that you're going to hear when you're going through adversity in your business. And so if you have built your muscle, your metaphorical muscle as an entrepreneur to deal with adversity and show up in a more powerful way, then you're going to have a higher likelihood of success in your business. So the number one thing you can do is to invest in yourself as an entrepreneur and your skill sets and up leveling them and constantly taking initiative. All right. And then the last one, why people fail in franchising and how to avoid it. The last one is, it's really tied into number 5, which we just talked about, but this one is not understanding the 80-20 rule. Okay. And so here's the 80-20 rule. It's not the 80-20 rule that you think about, which is the traditional 80-20 rule, which is 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. The 80-20 rule I'm talking about is strategy versus mindset. 80% of your success will come from your mindset, your ability to have an unstoppable and unshakable belief system and ability to execute. And so again, it's tied into what we just talked about in number 5. And here's what I mean by this, right? Because it can sound maybe a little woo-woo or like, well, Tariq, that doesn't really make sense. You're telling me just like my mindset determines 80% of my success? Yes, because it ties back into everything else that we just talked about. Part of mindset is your ability to make decisions, right? That's part of mindset, your ability to make decisions. Now, let's give an analogy here. I used to travel and speak for Tony Robbins, and he used to say, it doesn't matter how pumped up and motivated you are, if you're running east looking for a sunset as fast as you can, super pumped up and motivated, are you going to find it? No, because the sun sets in the west, right? And so strategy is 100% important. If you're in a business trying to market that business in a way that is ineffective, that is the wrong strategy, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. If it's the wrong strategy and not efficient, then you're not gonna succeed. Like your business is not gonna perform the way you want. You're not gonna generate the profits that you want. Here's where mindset comes in. Mindset allows you to actually be able to execute and follow through on the strategy. That's why it's more important than strategy, because you can have the right strategy, but if you're not disciplined enough to stick with it or to follow through, or you're super negative and you're constantly looking at what's working or why it's not working, or you're constantly complaining, or maybe you're lazy, right? Or maybe you just continually doubt and experience doubt, then what's going to happen? You probably are not going to continue with that strategy that could be effective. Interesting, right? And so right now, I can assure you that in your business or in your job, in your career, whatever it is, like there is a strategy right now that would get you exactly what you want. But it's going to be your mindset which will determine your ability to find and locate that strategy and to execute on it until it works. So let me know what you think about this episode. If you like this style of episode, what you got out of this, what was your top takeaway from this episode? I'm really curious, and how are you going to apply it? Look, at the end of the day, choosing the right business is important, right? There are so many examples of people succeeding as entrepreneurs. So the question is, how will you level up and make sure that you are growing as an individual to enhance your skill sets and your belief systems and your knowledge, your level of proactivity to ensure your success and make sure that you don't fail? We'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.